As the Republican race for the White House shifts south, that once crowded Republican field getting smaller. Carly Fiorina and Chris Christie bowing out after disappointing finishes in Iowa and New Hampshire, leaving just 7 Republicans to rumble in the first in the South primary in South Carolina 9 days from now. The Real Clear Politics average of polls showing Donald Trump way out in the front in the Palmetto State by nearly 20 points over Ted Cruz, who's in second place. Those polls all taken, by the way, before Trump won the New Hampshire primary. Cruz, who came in third place there but won Iowa, says he doesn't think conservatives in South Carolina want another deal maker, and that when the dust clears, the race will come down to him and the Donald.
I think at this point it is becoming more and more a two-man race between me and Donald Trump, and what we're seeing is conservatives uniting behind our campaign. And if conservatives continue to unite, we're going to win the nomination, and that's also how we win the general.
All right, in the words of Lindsey Graham, Andrea, if you're not ready to play, don't come to South Carolina. Is the race all coming down to Donald Trump and Ted Cruz?
Yeah, it's going to be a bloodbath, as everyone keeps saying that word bloodbath, between the two of them, because South Carolina has so many evangelical voters. And Cruz actually did well in New Hampshire, so he can argue, look, I'm coming out strong, and I'm going to battle Donald Trump now. This is perfectly suited for Ted Cruz. So he's going to give Donald Trump a run for his money. What's interesting, though, is someone like Trump was actually able to capture evangelicals in a place like Iowa. Can he do it again in South Carolina? Also, I think this talk of Rubio being counted out, he's so badly bruised, I wouldn't do it. I would not count Rubio out. I think that he's going to work really, really hard. However, the Bush campaign does seem to have what it needed out of New Hampshire. It needed a little bit of momentum to argue that even a fourth-place win can give them some strength to make another go at this. And they do have a case for that. But I think it's going to be interesting to watch the Cruz-Trump battle and then the separate battle that we heard Tony Sayegh mention yesterday. The NFC and the AFC are fighting it out right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a much different voting bloc, a bigger voting bloc, more diverse. How do you think the candidates are going to change their strategies in this state?
Well, I do think I think the tiers have solidified themselves a little bit, especially those top two, as you said, Andrea. It really will be a lot of incoming Bush v. Rubio, Rubio v. Bush. I mean, I think in this state, whoever comes in third is going to be able to carry the mantle as the third lane. And we thought, many people assumed it was going to be Rubio. He was bruised coming out of New Hampshire now. He has to have a good debate performance on Saturday. He's a very good debater who had a stumble, so he's in a good spot there to recover. And he and Bush are going to go after each other. I think a lot of people feel like a fourth-place finish in South Carolina for one of the two of them is going to would be a serious problem.
You bring up the debate, which that's going to be the GOP debate Saturday night. There's a Democratic debate tonight. Yeah. That debate Saturday night for the GOP could be a game changer.
Well, they all have been a game changer in some way, shape, or form. I think that what you're talking about, though, between Rubio and Bush is kind of pertinent right now, because you had, coming out of the last debate and out of New Hampshire, Rubio saying, well, one of the reasons why I didn't do well in that debate was because I was trying not to basically, and I'll paraphrase here, shoot inside the tent. I was trying not to be, counter-Republican.
Yeah.
Well, but wait a minute. You're going to have to do that if you're going to get through the war here.
And by the way, he is doing that.
Yeah, and in South Carolina, I mean, that is something that is essentially valued there. I think Marco Rubio is breathing a sigh of relief now that Chris Christie is out of the race. Chris Christie attacking him certainly hurt Marco Rubio. It obviously didn't help Chris Christie. And now Jeb Bush is relying on his family history to do well in South Carolina. But if this polling holds from RCP, those average polls from across the country, I think Jeb's going to have real problems moving past South Carolina.
Agreed. And he had to spend $36 million to just come in fourth in New Hampshire. Now, he does have a war chest. The problem is he's not a very strong candidate. We've seen that over and over. But make no mistake, Sandra, Trump is the front runner here. Cruz is only there to weaken him. Trump is still the front runner. And Kasich, who we saw, he had a very strong performance. His viability after New Hampshire, I don't think it's very, very great. I mean, that
Kasich surprised even himself, and he said, like, wow, we may have something going here. I don't think so. I don't think he's going to go into South Carolina.
Correct.
It is not hospitable territory to him.
I mean, one thing I would say, I'm sorry.
The poll we just cited, by the way, as we mentioned, it took place before New Hampshire. 20-point lead Donald Trump has over Ted Cruz before winning New Hampshire.
One thing I would say, though, about Jeb Bush, what a sigh of relief for him, because he's not going to be punching up to Donald Trump now. He really does have to take on Marco Rubio. That's actually got to be a better thing. He knows him well. They're both from Florida. Even coming early into this primary race, neither one of them were very popular among Floridians in terms of whether or not they thought they could make it to the White House.
There's going to be a big argument between the two of them, Rubio and Bush, about electability. The Rubio people are going to say, hey, Marco Rubio can rise, can win, is the future, and Jeb Bush, by attacking him and by attacking everyone else, you're merely preventing the opportunity for a third space. Right now, there is Trump and there is Cruz. And Rubio may have stumbled, but you talk to conservatives out there or so-called establishment or whatever, Jeb Bush, nice guy, great family, just not the right time, and they feel like Rubio could be that lane. He messed it up a lot himself, but if Jeb goes after him, it could be
And he just has to continue that Chris Christie attack because it's really, really effective, saying you are not ready for the job. Jeb also...
Does he cut himself the way Christie does, doing that?
I don't know if he can.
No, because it actually takes him away from criticizing Trump. I think Jeb looks worse criticizing Trump than he does going after Marco Rubio because he is punching down.
You made the best point. Can he do it? Jeb Bush is not Chris Christie. He's not Donald Trump. He's had trouble getting attacks that actually have gotten a glove on someone and stuck to this point. I do think whoever out of those two wins, or places I should say, above the other one, going into Florida has a much surer footing, and that's the true test. I mean, these are Florida guys. Florida will essentially tell us which one wins after South Carolina.
And they may already be telling us. We just don't know yet because the votes haven't been taken. So where is the voter in all of this? Because, I mean, I understand that the battle among themselves, but, in New Hampshire, people said that they wanted to tone down the rhetoric so that they could listen to the issues. In South Carolina, I get the evangelicals, but we have talked about the fact that they're not single-issue voters. Just because they believe and have faith, as I believe and have faith, we all have different things that we're attracted to. You talked about that electability. Some of the exit polling showed only 13% of people thought that that was important, that there were other issues that were more important to them. Being an outsider is huge.
I think there's still the outsider anger, frustration.
With or without the faith.
South Carolina has a new dynamic to a huge veterans and military population. I think McCain mobilized that effectively. Bush did in 2000. Marco Rubio has a South Carolina consultant team. He's got Tim Scott. He's got Trey Gowdy. Jeb Bush is Lindsey Graham, God bless him, but he's probably not bringing a ton of votes. So it's going to be the military aspect of that.
I'd love to know your philosophy, Pete. What do you think about that military community in South Carolina? Where do you see them falling? I mean, you talk to veterans every day.
I think they're looking for a commander-in-chief. They're looking for strength, and they're seeing different messages from Trump and Cruz rhetorically. I think Marco Rubio prides himself on being strong on the military, strong on articulating national defense, knowing foreign policy. Jeb is a little bit newer on that issue, doesn't articulate it as naturally.
About Trump and Cruz?
Trump and Cruz, I mean, they've both, I think, obviously a lot of appeal amongst veterans for Trump. He's talked about the VA. Same with Cruz, who talks about destroying ISIS. I don't know that we'll get into the intricacies because there's a lot of differences between what a Trump and a Cruz and a Rubio would do in
Okay, but
I think it's hard to attack and give your plan at the same time.
But here's what New Hampshire showed us. Voters will vote for Donald Trump. And that was one of the most critical things to come out of New Hampshire, because a lot of pundits said there's going to be a disconnect and there may be people who are turned on by his rhetoric, but that is not going to translate to the polling place. It most certainly did in New Hampshire. And if he holds that, 17-point lead in South Carolina, I think at some point you have to realize he's unstoppable.
Almost comes down to Rubio and Bush having to fight this wave of how do I talk people out of being in love with an outsider? I mean, just take their names off the plate for a second. How do you wage a war against taste? Against what you have a flavor for.
But speaking of the military, since getting on the ground, Bush has already gone after Kasich for his defense spending cuts. And Marco Rubio, while he wasn't willing to go after these guys in the debate, since getting on the ground there, he's already going after Jeb, after Trump for lacking policy specifics. He's not holding back.
We didn't talk about Dr. Ben Carson.
That's so weird. Neither are voters.
Oh, that's not fair.
I know. On that note.